Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very special transmission of opportunity of blockchain because it's not for Romania, it's for the world. With me in the Channel 30 studio, it's Artem Trofimenko, entrepreneur. Good evening.
Evening.
And Adrian Stratulat, Executive Director of Blockchain Association from Romania. Hello. And we have a very challenging topic for today because people start wondering in the crypto world, is Bitcoin especially and crypto in general failed as a currency? Is it just an investment method, a speculative method? Is it going to make it as a currency per itself? What do you think? And what will be the future of Bitcoin in your vision and of the other currencies? Artem.
Okay, that's a very complex question comprising of a few things, so let's break it down. First of all, question number one, has Bitcoin failed? Right, and you can see from the media that there's a lot of frustration going on around the market, because of the price action, recent price action, reduced volatility, etc. But I'd like to approach it in a different way. My question would be, what has changed from a year ago, right? Has Bitcoin changed itself? Not at all. Yeah, we had some forks, and it was, we can say it's only improved since then. So the fundamentals of Bitcoin hasn't, as a cryptocurrency, as an idea, let's say it like libertarian idea, the fundamentals of this haven't changed at all, right? So it is what it is, since 2009.
But this libertarian idea, people say is just for a nice talk, and people are hungry for money and they are greedy. And they are doing this only for the gain and not for these libertarian ideas.
Well, first of all, the idea of Bitcoin is extremely attractive, right? It's deregulated, decentralized, trustless payment method and store of value. And it went through all of the tests, right? Successfully. It still exists. So irregardless of price action, you can still transact with it and you can still store value. So my quick answer to the failure question would be absolutely not, my personal perspective. And let me ask you a question again in an interactive style. Have you ever received a payment in Bitcoin?
No, and this is the problem.
You should try, because for example, in our fintech side of the business, we transact with clients all over the world, right? And if we have, say, a client in Southeast Asia, right, and they are operating in their local currency, let's say Thai baht, right? For them to pay us for the services, they would need to go out in the market, purchase US dollars, send a SWIFT payment, and for us to wait, 3-4 days for it to arrive. Right? And that's the hold-up that we experience in the business. The moment you start transacting in Bitcoin, in the space of 15-20 minutes, you have your payment, it's irreversible, you received funds, you are good to go to work with the client. That's my personal experience in my business, which I appreciate a lot.
I will get back to you, but I want to hear a view from Adrian. What do you think, Adrian? As an overview of this.
Yeah, I would also break the question down into like 2 or 3 questions. So first of all, the question is, has Bitcoin failed as a currency? Not at all, because as you said, Bitcoin can also be seen as a speculative or an investment asset. You can look at it as an asset or as a currency.
Or as a stored value.
Exactly. And this splits the question into 2 smaller questions, or you could look at even a third question if we're talking about the failure of Bitcoin as just Bitcoin or all the cryptocurrencies in general. So I would start addressing them one by one. I think Bitcoin as a means of payment, as a currency, has some challenges because it is primarily used as an investment asset. Right?
Somebody said on the internet, and I tend to give him credit because he's an insider of the industry, kind of a guru. He said like 4 million people have in their private wallets more than $100 in Bitcoin, so to say. So being in the market for 10 years and have only 4 million customers in the world, using actually the currency, he saw as a failure, because he gave the example, for example, of Airbnb or Uber, who are younger than Bitcoin on the market and already have a huge usability. While Bitcoin has a few companies that actually put their Bitcoin to make purchasing of goods and services. And he gave some examples of companies that used to have and dropped it. So he doesn't see growth in this. There are some new companies that introduce payment in crypto and in Bitcoin, some that drop down this kind of payment. So he is skeptical about the success of Bitcoin in terms of real currency.
Actually, it's quite ironic, to be honest. There were some portals using Bitcoin as a payment mean of payments, but this happened exactly when Bitcoin was at the top of the wave, so when it was $90,000, and the reason they did that is that they foresaw a continuous growth.
And they thought they would gain more by storing the Bitcoin.
It was not as a currency, because we're talking about two different, let's say,
it was a speculative approach.
Exactly. So this is exactly the problem, because if you want to buy it in order to store it and gain value from its, let's say, growth, then you will not use it as a currency. And on the other hand, if you want to use it as a payment method, as a currency, you will not want high volatile speculations on the market. So it has to be a trade-off between volatility and stability. And so far, Bitcoin hasn't reached that, because the community cannot decide if they want a stable coin, because it had a plateau of stability and nobody liked it. And now when they have volatility, they cannot have currency, so it's either one or the other.
Can I comment on this
Please.
as well? Comparing Airbnb and Uber to Bitcoin is a bit like comparing a needle to a sword, in my opinion, because you are comparing a service of sharing your beds and your rooms in the apartment and giving people rides to money, right? And let me ask you, how long did it take for the world to pick up the switch from gold as a means of payment to paper money?
I think it took 1,000 years.
I think it took a bit longer than 10 years that Bitcoin is in the market, right? So we're talking about entirely different concept. You can't just compare companies. Yeah, they're all unicorns, right? In a way that, you know, they pick up from a startup from scratch, they have a good dev team, and then they become multi-billion-dollar entities. Yes, they are similar in that, but the concept is extremely different, right? This is services to, let's say, B2C services, and Bitcoin is something way bigger and more complex, which is, you know, means of payment, which is storage of value, you know, speculation opportunity. There's few things to be considered here.
But what does it mean that only 4 million people give or take? Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 3. It doesn't matter exactly. It's not a billion. Right. It's not 500 million. What keeps people from owning and using Bitcoin as a currency, number one? Number two, is it a very concentrated market? There are few entities, private persons or investment companies that owns the majority of Bitcoin, and all the rest have very small fractions?
Can we split the questions half and half, right?
Go ahead.
So I'll pick the first one. I think the biggest problem when dealing with Bitcoin is the fact that it was a prototype. And just as any prototype, you know, it's like having wires hanging outside. It's not very neat. It's like comparing, I don't know, the first IBM computer, which was something very big and clunky, to a smooth design of a Mac. So the industry haven't had the time to get to that smooth usage design. So in order to use Bitcoin, you have to install the node, and you have to do all kind of technical stuff. I mean, it's not yet an easy experience. The learning curve in order to use Bitcoin is quite harsh. I think this is the biggest problem with Bitcoins. There are newer coins which they adapted in an ecosystem. It's like a friendlier interface, easier to use wallets, and all kind of things like that. People want simplicity. if they will be able to use a cryptocurrency, just like, I don't know, paying with the phone, with the NFC or with the card, then it's going to reach mass adoption.
What do you think, Artem?
I'll continue with the second part.
Please?
It's the observation you made that there are a few whales who own massive chunks
big whales.
Yeah, big whales who own massive chunks of cryptocurrency, and there are some other casual users, let's put it this way, who have, you know, between...
I'm a small fish, the smallest in the world.
Between $100 to, you know, several $1,000s. But come on, let's look at the fiat markets. Don't we have pension funds? Don't we have hedge funds with billions under management? Don't we have derivatives, overblown derivatives market, which is, you know, I think
and
crypto
they own
whales.
99.99% of the money, all the rest we split.
I'm convinced crypto whales are nothing in comparison to hedge funds and private pension funds. That's just I'm persuaded on that side.
And what is it with these forks? What is the upper side and downside of these forks in cryptocurrencies?
I think I'm probably, Adrian is probably the best person to talk about
because
from the technical side.
For example, I invested in a Bitcoin farm, let's say, a small amount. And I hear after that they started to produce or to use Bitcoin Cash. After that, Bitcoin Gold. After I don't understand the simple user.
If you were at the point to invest in Bitcoin when it was just Bitcoin, lucky you, because you have everything right now, right? The idea of a fork, in my simple terms, is that whenever people who are part of consensus reach an agreement that it can be better, right? They can do what's called a hard fork, right? Which stays, whatever stays below the T0 just stays as it was, and onwards it becomes two different blockchains, right? And you can have an improvements to the original design, like what we saw, for example, with Bitcoin Cash, right? Which is improved speed and the transaction volume, etc. Right? So they took the best out of Bitcoin and made it faster for people to rely on it. However, you know, true libertarians still believe in Bitcoin and they don't care about the transaction speed. They would rather focus on the puristic side of the idea.
What do you think, Adrian?
I think it's a drawback with this attitude. I mean, with the attitude in the market regarding this purism, so to say, the fact that some people think that the original Bitcoin, I mean, this is the original chain, we should not make any attempts to improve the technology, this is like the Holy Grail, and this is our Messiah, Satoshi Nakamoto delivering to us Bitcoin. This approach, I think, is counterproductive to the industry, because you need to have a technology evolving in time. So this is why I would come back to an earlier question, which was whether we're talking about the failure of cryptocurrencies in general or just Bitcoin.
And what do you think?
I think Bitcoin as a product, as let's say an application, an early application of blockchain, is quite outdated. I would not say it is failure in any way, because it's not a failure, it is an example of success. But just as in many industries, there are examples of success in the, I don't know, now and 10 years after, those examples of success, they are obsolete. For example, look at, I will make a comparison with the mobile phones. So 10 years ago, it was Nokia. Nokia was delivering the best phones. Or, I don't know, in the photography market, it was Kodak. But technologies have to stay on top, otherwise you become obsolete. It's not going to be just the name. People still get involved with Bitcoin and they invest in Bitcoin because it's the best known cryptocurrency. I mean, it has the biggest spread. Everybody talks about Bitcoins. You even have shows on TV for people that have nothing to do with cryptocurrency, and they talk about Bitcoin. But the thing is, from my perspective, it should stay in touch with the technology and it should improve.
What do you think, Artem? Do you believe in the future of crypto as a currency? Not especially Bitcoin, but crypto in general. Would we going to use crypto as a real alternative to fiat money?
Oh, it's already been used as a real alternative to fiat money. The only question is where is the adoption heading, right? What's the rate of adoption? And this question is purely, it's a conflict of two ideas, right? First of all, we have regulation, and second of all, we have a libertarian core idea of independence and distribution, right? And these don't match. They don't mix like oil and water. So the first thing, which was the biggest problem, is actually being resolved right now. The first thing was the AML KYC issues, right? So any financial institution being bound by the financial regulations has to know who is the customer for avoiding, any sorts of money laundering, and terrorist activity, financing.
Going with this to the absurd. I just experienced something today regarding the relation with the banking industry, and they are going with the bureaucracy to the absurd. We are coming back to the middle ancient times.
Oh, what happened?
It doesn't matter exactly. They ask all kinds of paperwork. On the one side, we are trying to go in this technology era and making things easier. And on the other side, banks ask you to do all kinds of paperwork in order to have a bank account and to work with them.
There has to be a middle ground, right? We don't want this technology to facilitate illegal businesses, illegal activities, people trafficking, drug trafficking, money laundering, etc., right? So people kind of have a consensus on that. So the question is, what do you do about this to make the technology fast, reliable, efficient, and transparent enough? And that's where the that's where the failure of Bitcoin comes in. That's where the Bitcoin is conceptually different. It cannot stick in, but there are other solutions.
For example, to give you an example of what happened today, let's say that in order to have a bank account, we need to go to the bank. We have a company, 3 of us, and we need to have a meeting and sign a form, a particular sign-up form that says your passport that you have, it's an original, is really your passport. So we agree it's a passport and put on a piece of paper, the bank piece of paper in original, and give it to them. Although you have your passport and you can show them.
So the passport is not enough on its own?
Yes, no, we have to have a meeting, an AGA to...
Yeah. Well, in a way, I see why, but on the other hand, I think also the institutions should catch up with times. I mean, another example, I can bring another example to the table, is the way we're dealing with, digital signatures, right? So we have the laws in many countries, including in Romania, we have the laws how to work with digital signatures, who should be able to give to a private individual his own digital signature. But the technology is itself also outdated. You need to have like a digital type of a token, which is not actually needed because we have technologies right now on the phone. They work in the same way as a bank token system. So we have newer, better technologies. So in a sense, the fact that we can juxtapose the digital signature over the handwritten signature and they have the same legal force should allow us to do more things with the digital signature. But alas, we cannot, because the law, the way the legislators see the things, it's a bit outdated. It's always in the past. I mean, technologies always they run ahead of regulation, and regulations and regulators and overall state authorities should catch up.
And they are not catching up. They are going backwards. The next thing they will ask me to do is maybe to put the finger, to have my fingerprint on their paper. And maybe after that they will not believe it. They will need my blood to take a sample to make sure my DNA is real. I mean, we are going to the absurd. I exaggerate a little bit, but
GDPR,
I want to give you a feeling of what I felt as a client of a bank. So will cryptocurrency liberate us from this constraint?
Can I jump in here real quick? Cryptocurrency might not be the answer to everything. Like just taking this particular example of your personal pain of dealing with a specific bank doesn't mean that banking in general failed. come on, let's look at the unicorns right now. Let's look at Revolut, look at N26, right? Look at those guys. They are, in a sense, they have banking licenses. They're in a sense a bank, but they do it in a entirely different fashion. They are mobile-only institutions who make your life easy. You can open a bank account, you can transact in seconds, right? So the old traditional, let's say, high street banks, right, will face the point when they will be robbed of clients by mobile-only banks and by actually very high-tech institutions.
Brick-and-mortar banks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking about other currencies than Bitcoin, do you have a favorite in terms of business or in terms of tech or in terms of the future you see?
You mean cryptocurrencies,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay. So there are many.
A specific coin.
There are many which are very interesting, and we can also split here the discussion. We can talk about, let's say, coins that only have financial transfer value, right? Or coins which are not just coins, they're utility tokens. I personally prefer more the utility tokens because they open the door to, let's say, a specific platform, a specific usage, which means there is a real business behind it, right? But also coins that they do not have this utility behind them, but they have great technology behind them. For example, I don't know, IOTA, Monero, they serve a specific purpose in a very good way, right? So, for example, if you're very keen on privacy, you don't want people to know to whom you've given money, from whom you took some money, and stuff like that, you go to some privacy-oriented coins like Monero, or other zero-knowledge coins, right? So I think we should not look for a coin that fits all sizes. So we should look for specific purposes, either utilities like, for example, in Romania we have MVAT, which is a token for trading energy, or SWASM, which is going to be a token that is going to power computing. So we are going to have specific tokens for specific tasks. We're not looking at something that's general, is broad, and everybody is using it. Because to do that, it would have to be the jack of all trades. I mean, it would have to be the fastest, the quickest, the best in any way possible. And sometimes there are trade-offs. You cannot be the best at everything.
And people are spending their money, most of them, on some very specific things: rent, food, holidays, cars, few things, and a small proportion to all the rest. Will we see a time when we will be in the situation to pay the rent in crypto? I mean, not as an exception, as a regular
in a specific token that would work better than fiat money, you mean?
Yes. Or would in a time, I don't know, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, I don't know, what will be the length in time when we will have some crypto as common as a fiat?
You can make it happen in a year, right? You can make people pay their rents in a year if you create an intelligent structure which would incentivize people to do that, right? If people would be incentivized, like get lower rent, and on the other side, for the landlord, get some extra added benefits, that's the deal done. But the question is, you need to come up with an idea which would be worth it. Right? Because right now everybody is trying to launch a token for whatever, for everything, right? People have tokens for absolutely whatever they can think of. But is there a need for that, right? Are they resolving any real problem? That's where the blockchain is not the remedy to everything, in my opinion. It's very specific, and it has a broad usage, but it's not a remedy for absolutely everything. That's
it doesn't cure cancer.
It doesn't cure cancer. I knew you'd ask that.
No, but you can launch a medical campaign to raise funds to finance fighting cancer.
And you can put medical data records on. On a blockchain, which would be encrypted and would be safer than those records held in hospitals.
Bang. Well, speaking about utility tokens, to understand a little bit this. For example, if we, as Channel 43, launch an utility token, it can be a way of financing the channel, but as well we need to offer something, some utility to the users, yes?
If you want to, to attract funds, you are better off actually making a security token, which would be giving people incentives and part of future earnings, right? In this case, ICO becomes some sort of an IPO. You attract investment and then you distribute profits. But if you're thinking of utility token, so how is it going to be utilized? It can be in a way, for example, if you create pay-per-view channel,
yes,
right? Then people can pay for that with a discount using your token. Right, but you need to have a loyal customer base to follow that.
So I want you to see this as an example of how companies can start inventing and using crypto world to develop themselves. There is some talks about Facebook coins. Will we going to see something like that in the near future?
Well, as far as I know, Facebook already bought a company which is the first crypto, let's say, blockchain-based investment that Facebook does. There were also some speculations regarding micropayments in services which Facebook owns, such as WhatsApp or many others. I don't know any data from the market, so we were only dealing with speculations. But if such a measure is implemented, that would mean a boost to all the coins in the market, because it would show a great deal of trust in order to implement such a service. Going back to STO versus ICO, and which of the, let's say, financing methods should a company use? So we have two cases. If you only want to raise funding, but you can offer like a percentage of your shares, that would be an STO. It's like a crypto-based IPO. On the other hand, ICOs are more likely you have a service which is dependent on implementing a blockchain infrastructure. And you want to do something like a platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, something that you want to give access with tokens, then you go for an ICO. So if you're a traditional business and you're looking just for funding, do an STO. If you want to do something which is blockchain-based as a technology solution, then you do an ICO. And sometimes they can overlap, but basically this is the basic split.
Agreed.
Should we have today in our wallets cryptocurrencies as a simple people?
Of course, if you get teleported to San Francisco and then you need a method of alternative payments, you can. I lastly checked, it was about 240 venues where you can pay with crypto. It's ranging from bars to different shops. So there is application for that, but of course it's nothing to compare with how you can spend your fiat money.
And there is some limitation of how much money can you have in your wallet, in your phone with you. Like, for example, if I go in United States or I don't know, in UK, I cannot bring with me more than $10,000.
No, you can. You have to declare it.
Yes?
Of course you can. You just have to declare it. You have to warn the country that you're coming with money.
So it's not a physical limitation that I came with $1 million?
Well, if you come with $1 million, they will ask you a question, right? So what's the $1 million for, and where did you take it? But it doesn't mean that you cannot come with it.
It's a funny image, though. Yeah. Come with a huge. I mean, in how many bags would the biggest banknote that we have? How many should be? I mean, suitcases with money to carry like $10 million.
It's like a big thing.
I mean, yeah, but you could have that in Bitcoins or in Ether or any other coins on a stick, or even you can say that you don't actually have it because it's on the blockchain. You just access it with a stick like an Ledger or Trezor.
So to answer this simply, there are no limits of holding a certain cryptocurrency, but when you will be needing to, let's say, exchange it on the exchange or do something with, let's say, do a high value purchase, you will always have the AML, KYC questions asked, and that's normal.
And how safe it is to have cryptocurrencies in your wallet, is it safer or less safer than having fiat?
Well, I think it's true testament to how safe it is to have crypto in your wallet is the recent accident with a Canadian crypto exchange. I think it's Quadriga.
Yeah, it's Quadriga.
Yes, where the owner of the exchange, who was also a general manager, passed away. And he was, in their corporate structure, he was the only one with access codes to the cold storage. And over 200 million, I believe, of 200 million worth of cryptocurrency basically is inaccessible anymore. You know, so if these people holding the cryptocurrency and you know, the person lost, let's say, the keys are inaccessible, you know, there is no trick around it. You know, you can't.
So if you have the fiat in a vault, you bring people with big machines, and eventually you break through. But
with a court order, for example, but there is no court order which would restore your cryptocurrency. So you have to be really careful about storing and making sure it's safe.
You know, going a bit into the sci-fi territory here, you could say you could bring like a quantum computer again. You can brute force break the password, but I think that's more in the sci-fi territory, so it's not feasible for now. So for now, and like for I think the next 10 or 20 years, it will be impossible to break or to recover funds which are lost. So there's no way to get funds if you don't have access, and that means either, you know, the PIN, if it's a hard wallet, a hardware wallet, or even the, you know, the words which are the recovery seed words. So you have to have access to the wallet, otherwise you cannot break in and steal it.
So actually I can pretend I have $1 billion in Bitcoin in this computer, but I can no longer access it, and I can launch an ICO to develop a research to break the key from my computer?
Well, I would not advise doing that.
You are, in this case, you are the weak chain link, right? If there is anything, any data which you made up, right, people will gladly take on a mission to break it. If it's you know, private key of a wallet, you know, it's pretty much useless to do that at this point in time.
What do you think about this drop in prices? We are with Bitcoin, we're at $3.5 thousand dollars?
Something like that. It all started with the big dump of all the Bitcoins that were stolen years ago from Mt. Gox. So basically what we're dealing with is a lack of trust, I would say. But it's not only that. It was many factors. I mean, it was also the uncertainty dealing with the hard fork of the latest hard fork in Bitcoin. It was also dealing with the fact that we're talking about many regulation across many countries. It was also about the fact that there are some cryptocurrencies which are, let's say, more or less following the footsteps of Bitcoin, and they're trying to, you know, take down the king and go for the position of #1. So it's a set of factors which contributed to the fall of Bitcoin. And overall, you know, I don't want to go into mysticism, but it's almost an endless set of factors which led to this situation. It's like you cannot trace exactly, you cannot pinpoint which are all the causes that caused this drop, because sometimes it's even something as simple as psychology. You see it going down for a bit and you're like, okay, it's going down and I'm out, and then it all cascades because everybody gets out, and by selling the value drops even more. And it's all about sentiment analysis. You can look at data, you can see how it happened, but you can never know exactly why it happened.
For example, if I have bought Bitcoin 5 years ago and went into a coma, let's say, and woke up today and see it's $300, $500, I would say, wow, it's a miracle, I'm rich, no?
Well, if you bought a Bitcoin 5 years ago, you'd have a bit more than $300 or $500, and that would be, you know, a good welcome surprise for you today. Now, I have actually a bit different approach to that. I perfectly understand the price action is basically very sentiment based right now. It's not even about adoption, it's not about, it's pure sentiment going around. But Sentiment is something which is extremely volatile. It's the most volatile thing out there. Let's look at fundamentals. What has changed since December 2017 when the market was going bananas? What has changed? Pretty much nothing, right? The adoption grew. The
electricity price won't going down
exactly.
by 10 times.
Access to institutional money has been granted. It's now futures are being tradable on various exchanges, right? So adoption is going up. Usage is going up. It's only about the capitalization, how much money is being kept in actual cryptocurrency, and that thing can change extremely fast. The fundamentals are still there. The Bitcoin, let's say, I'm just talking about Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin has a limited supply, just as it used to. So if you think about anything other than that, right, something with a limited supply, shouldn't fall in price. With a growing usage, growing adoption, with a limited supply, that's, supply and demand curve. It's the falling price doesn't make sense.
If I have $1 billion today and I want to buy Bitcoin, can I buy it? Do I find
1 billion? You want
yes.
to buy 1 billion worth of Bitcoins?
Yes.
You would, but not necessarily in one batch. You wouldn't be able to execute 1 billion in one batch unless it's a private deal. Which would be a very niche specific and possibly shady to execute. But you can, if you can prove the origins of your 1 billion, you can access any of the exchanges. Some of the exchanges have right now OTC trading desks, which means that they can execute high tickets. And you can execute it in the space of probably a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks?
Maybe less.
Well, I don't know exactly which is the circulating supply for Bitcoins on the biggest exchanges in the world. I can look it up, and perhaps I think it's like if you take like 10 exchanges or something like that, you can do it.
The biggest in the world?
Yeah, I think you can do it in a few days. It's possible. Because total value, the total market capitalization of Bitcoin is well over that value. So it's not a problem of not having the liquidity in the market. It's not, you cannot execute the order at one time, in one place, in one day. It would take a lot, not a lot, it takes some time, but you can pull it off.
To take some conclusions out of this, so is it Bitcoin failed as a currency or not?
I'll retract to my answer earlier. I don't see what has changed for us to regard it as a failure. A difference in price action is not an indication of pretty much anything at this point. So my answer is no.
What do you think, Adrian?
My answer is also no, but with the big question mark is, as long as the community is able to drive technological progress, that would be looking at some forks, perhaps, which the community would follow the right fork, so to say, because also forking means you can also follow the old chain or the new chain, and that would be just for Bitcoin. But now going back to the question and trying to address it in terms of cryptocurrencies overall, I would say no, I think they are the future, but they must serve some specific tasks and some specific objectives, and they also have to do some, let's say, they must fulfill some of the basic premises of being a currency, which means not only liquidity, scarcity, and the most basic ones, but you also have to have behavior as a currency, not as a speculative investment asset. I think this is the highest problem in the cryptocurrency world as of today. Everybody is going in, not for the usage, not because they can buy, I don't know, something from Amazon with Bitcoins. They're not interested in that, and they're not interested in the political ideals. They're interested in the fact that it has high volatility and they can make 1x, 2x, 4x. And as long as you're looking to make 5x or 10x, I don't think any of the shop owners, they will be willing to take the risk and implement it as a payment method. So somewhere the community will have to make a trade-off between volatility, which means potential capital gains, and stability, which means actual usage as a currency.
Me, as an entrepreneur looking for financing businesses, I am in a way happy that this running for the gold is diminishing, because a year ago, for example, when I discussed with some investors, they said, I'm not interested in anything except crypto, because anything in the world can bring me the value that crypto can give me, so I'm not interested to hear of any other idea than crypto. Now I feel the world is coming back with the feet on the ground and start looking also to other opportunities. It's not just crypto running for the goal.
Even in crypto, there is, two laws of evolution, natural selection, right? If you have thousands of projects without actual valuable idea, they have to die, right? But the true investors who understand the technology, who understand the concept, I think they don't have a 1 year, 2 years mindset time frame. I think they're rather thinking about 10, 15, 20 years ahead.
So with these conclusions, we are at the end of our special edition show. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you to the audience for watching us, and we'll be back with new international editions soon. Keep an eye on us. Thank you.